We've known for quite some time that the Mariners' offense, as currently constructed, is a recipe for disaster. But while significant changes are undeniably needed, can anything actually be done right now?
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, June 24th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. Before we get into this week's batch, though, shout out to our title sponsor today, PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB. That's all lowercase for first deposit match up to $100. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. Gregory is going to kick us off here on Mailbag Monday with a question about Julio, saying Julio has just 13 extra base hits as we approach 81 games played. How has he done this? What does he need to do in his final 81 games to salvage his season? Colby?
How he's done it is he made some changes to his swing that have left him completely vulnerable to really any kind of velocity on the inside corner. He's just getting eaten alive by that pitch. As a result, you could probably notice this just by watching Julio regularly. He's not driving the ball to left field hardly ever. And he's also not hitting the ball in the air to left field hardly ever. And those are two things that, kind of important when you're trying to hit doubles and home runs. Like it's very hard to hit a double on a hard hit ground ball. Those balls don't find the gap that often. It's even harder to hit a home run on a ground ball. So he's hitting a ton of ground balls. He's not pulling the ball enough in the air in particular to really generate those extra base hits. And while Julio has the power to go to dead center field and he can go to right field, we've seen him do it a few times. A good chunk of his home runs are going to come and extra base hits are going to come to his pull side because that's the type of hitter he is. So he's certainly capable of hitting a double into the right center field gap, of hitting a home run to right center field. He did it against the White Sox a few days ago. Like, we know he can do that. It's just he's not going to do that enough to hit for enough power that it's going to be, the type of player that you need Julio to be. Like, you need Julio to be a guy who's hitting 30 home runs. Like, you have to have that because a lot of your team is built around the idea that, like, yeah, we have a little bit less power at third base, but we're going to make up for that because we have elite power from a center fielder. And right now you don't. So now you have a power shortage in your lineup, and it's because of Julio. So he's got to hit the ball in the air more. He's got to hit it to the pull side more. And when he is hitting the ball in the air, it seems like he's mostly flying out to right field, or he's, lining out to right field, or he's dropping base hits into right field. And the base hits are fine. Like, Julio's batting average is not the problem. Nobody's going to be upset if he's hitting 260, right? Like that's fine. It's a little low, but it's fine. It's within the range. It's slugging sub 400. And it's, like you said, 13 extra base hits in half a season. It's just not going to fly. He should have, 13 home runs by now, not just extra base hits. So he's got to get to the pull side. He's got to figure out how to hit that inside pitch because right now he's incredibly easy to pitch to. And it's not even like he's taking, he's chasing off the plate inside too. So he's just a mess right now. And ultimately, we can blame the hitting coaches. We can blame whoever we want. It's on Julio. Julio has to be better. It's really that simple. He's the one who has to make the adjustment. And there's, only so much a hitting coach or the Mariners can do to help him do it. At the end of the day, it's on him to figure it out.
You want to know what's wrong with Julio? Go into the day app, look at yesterday's game, look at his second to last at bat. Look at specifically pitch number 2. It's a cutter, middle, upper third of the zone, and he swings right through it. He has to do damage on that pitch. He has to, and he is consistently not doing damage with pitches like that. Peter wants to know, does Mitch Haniger survive the trade deadline, or is there another bad contract swap that he might be a part of, or just DFA'd?
He's not hitting lefties really. He's not hitting righties really. So, yeah, he's, obviously he's hurting you defensively as well. They've tried to play him in the field a little bit less. They've tried to use him only against lefties, and nothing's really working. He's still hitting okay at T-Mobile Park, which is kind of weird. But I don't think he's a major league quality player right now, and it's unfortunate because Haniger's done some great things for you, and he's had some big moments, and even this year he's had some good stretches, and he's helped you at times this year. But now you just look at what he is, and he's a guy whose body is just kind of finally shut down on him a little bit, and he's just not able to do what he's been capable of doing, and it's a bummer, because it's mostly injury related. It's not really his fault, but it is just reality, and the Mariners probably should face that reality and just eat the money, but I don't think they're going to, and I do think they value his some of his clubhouse stuff a little bit.
Right.
It just, it's tough to justify that at $17 million, but this isn't the NFL. You're paying that, whether he's on the roster or not. And it's just tough to say right now that there's somebody who is down in the minors who absolutely should have Mitch Haniger's spot. Like, they just don't have a ton of bats who are performing down in AAA. So it's a little bit of a gray area there. They probably should move on. I don't think they will.
Yeah. Yeah. With the way that they've operated, they are not just going to say, all right, here's your money, go away now.
Mm-hmm.
If they do, I'll believe it when I see it. But for now, I have no expectation of that happening, even though it probably should. Yep. All right, we're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and PrizePicks. I know I'm saying the obvious here, but I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, unfortunately, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKDON, and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And even though the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on PrizePicks. Women's basketball is still heating up, with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Tonight in baseball, I'm taking Cole Reagan's more than 6.5 strikeouts against the Marlins. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. The M's kick off a 3-game series with the Tampa Bay Rays tonight, or rather this afternoon for those of you in the Pacific time zone. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast of SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. We got another question here from Seattle Sports Fan here on Mailbag Monday. Seattle Sports Fan asks, what are the long-term ramifications, if any, to the Johnny Farelo injury? It's not uncommon for guys to lose a chunk of their quickness even years after recovery, and speed was maybe his best tool. Does this change your prospect outlook / trade value for him in the future? So Farelo, for those of you that don't know, did tear his ACL a couple weeks ago. To answer the last part of your question, no, because we don't know how this is going to affect him long term, if at all. Because look, we're not doctors, but ACL injuries players have recovered from, because you look across all leagues, right? Not just MLB, but also NBA, NFL. Guys have come back from ACL injuries, and they've looked pretty much basically the same player, if not even better in some instances. So it's not as much of a death knell as it used to be. But yeah, obviously there's a level of concern of how this could impact him long term. But until we see him, we can't definitively say one way or the other. Any thoughts you have on that, Colby?
Yeah, there's different degrees of ACL tears. There's complete reconstruction, which can be a little bit troublesome and all that. But, I think what people, I think when we think knee injuries in the Mariners, we think of a guy like Kyle Lewis.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the second knee injury that he just kind of lost all of his speed and agility and all that stuff. And Farelo, again, it may not seem like a big deal, but he's 19 when he gets hurt. Like, it's a little bit different when you tear your ACL at 19 than it is when you're 25, 26, 27, and you have all the wear and tear on it. So, to me, I'm not going to downgrade him at all in my prospect ranks, not until we actually see what he looks like post ACL injury. It's a bummer. It certainly is. But, it's also worth noting that he probably plays sometime next year. So I don't think this is going to be a huge deterrent on him. And speed might be his best tool right now, but there's plenty to believe in the bat and the arm and the power department as well. And I doubt he goes from 70 grade runner to 45 grade runner because of one ACL injury. But again, we don't know. We're not doctors. We're not quite sure how he's going to bounce back from this. It'll certainly be something to watch, but right now there's really nothing I can do about it. So I'm not gonna worry about that.
Right. In terms of trade value, I mean, I can't imagine a lot of teams right now are looking to trade for someone that just recently tore their ACL. So yeah, his trade value might be a bit down right now. I don't think it's like completely gone. I think teams would still be very much interested in acquiring Johnny Farmelo, but they're probably in that regard taking the angle of like, hey, can we get Johnny on the cheap? Next question from Hunter. Who do you think is more likely to be sent down when Polanco returns? Ryan Bliss or Tyler Locklear? If Locklear is sent down, how do you give both Bliss and Polanco playing time?
Most likely to be sent down would be Locklear. Just because he didn't play this weekend. He didn't appear in the series whatsoever. And again, he pinch ran in game one. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. Now, some of that is because the Marlins didn't start the lefties that you thought they were going to start in games 2 and 3. But yeah,
he still couldn't find a way. And again, it's not like Ty France is destroying the baseball right now. He's walking a lot, which is fun, I guess. But it's not like he's been so good that you can't put him in the lineup over Ty France or Garver had a really bad series at the plate. So they didn't play him, and there's no point in having him on the roster. You're not going to play him. So he should be the guy they send down. How do you get Bliss and how do you get Polanco in the lineup? Well, you DH Polanco. Polanco can play third. Bliss can play some shortstop if you need him to. So there are ways to get both guys at bats. Bliss obviously was the best player the Mariners had this weekend, which is not a good thing. As fun as it was, it's certainly not a good thing. But yeah, so it's tough to, when you look at how the offense is struggling right now, it's tough to justify sending down Ryan Bliss at the moment because again, he also helps you. He's one of the better athletes on the team. Yep. He can play up the middle. He can steal a bag. He's shown some power, maybe not over the wall power, but he's certainly got the pop. And right now strikeouts aren't really a problem. He's putting the ball in play consistently. Like, you find a way to make it happen. And, Polanco's got plenty of experience playing third. So if you want to give Josh Rojas more time off and use him more situationally, you can do that. But also, against right-handed pitching, Bliss can be on the bench and he can be a weapon off the bench late, which Locklear just can't. Mm-hmm. Versus a left-handed pitcher, then, Bliss should probably be in the lineup at second base. And maybe it's shortstop and JP gets a day off against the lefty. And then maybe Rojas just plays third against left-handed pitching, and Dylan Moore goes and plays right field for Dom Canzone against right-handed pitching. Like, you can make it work. Obviously, Bliss will get fewer at-bats than he's gotten over the last 4 or 5 days, but you can still get him enough to justify keeping him on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. I think Bliss, especially over the last few games, dating back to that last game in Cleveland, has done more than enough here to kind of, look, it's basically like a short sample size that you're having to base this off of. But within that short sample size, I think Bliss has proven his value far more than Locklear right now in a multitude of ways for you. Yeah. So I think Bliss is the guy here that should get the call. All right, we are going to answer some more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the M's and the Rays tonight through Wednesday on the Mariners hometown broadcast of SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Got a couple more questions here on Mailbag Monday before we get out of here. This one comes from Jay Smart. What would Jazz Chism and AJ Puck cost, and where would Jazz theoretically play if the M's acquired him? Colby.
Yeah, where Jazz plays, probably a corner outfield spot at this stage, but you can also play second base. So you can put Jazz in left or right field for now, and then you kind of see how Polanco and Bliss works out for, a few weeks. And then, if he can't do that, then Jazz can go back to his natural position, which is, technically shortstop, but he's played a lot of second base as well. So, the fit for Jazz really not that hard in terms of getting him regular playing time. He would help you in the outfield. He could help you at second base as well. So that part's not too hard. As for the cost, tough to say. Jazz is a fun player, certainly, but he is a guy who has a lot of red flags. He has injury risk, quite a bit of it. That he's missed significant time, very similar to Luis Robert. In the past, there have been severe split issues. He hasn't hit lefties at all. This year, I think he's doing pretty well against lefties. But there's still a huge sample size that says he shouldn't hit against left-handed pitching. He's young, though, so this could just be him getting better. That could just be a skill that he's developed. So can't say for sure that he's a platoon guy, but that's probably, based on the evidence that we have, that's probably what's most likely going to be the case there. But yeah, it's the health that's the big red flag on Jazz Chism, and it's just tough to trust a guy like that right now. But you're the Marlins. Is the guy who's got, I think, 2 full years after this year, left to club control. He's a above average center fielder. He can play second base. He steals bags. He's got power, and now he's starting to hit lefties. That's going to be a player that Miami is basically going to demand they get the price that they want, or they're not going to move them. So a little bit tough to put a good value on Jazz Chism. AJ Puck is a guy who is really struggling this year, but he obviously does have high leverage stuff. Just, he's a bit pricier than I would like to pay. That's what I would say.
He's not my choice of the Marlins bullpen options. I would put it that way. Especially for the lefties. I would prefer Tanner Scott, and honestly, I'd probably prefer Andrew Nardi when just comparing potential costs over Puck as well.
Yeah, I don't want to pay extra for Puck. If they're throwing Puck in as like a literal throw-in, fine, whatever. Yeah. But I'm not paying an extra penny to get AJ Puck. There are other guys in this bullpen that I would pay a little bit more for. But yeah, the other thing with Jazz too is that he does have a bit of a strikeout issue, although this year it's been fine. He's at 24.5% right now, which again is fine, but
yeah,
it's not great, but it's not bad. And he's a 114 WRC plus guy. He's probably going to be a 3-win player if he plays enough. That's a good player.
Yeah.
It's not an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Miami's going to look at Jazz Chism, and they're going to look at his age, and they're going to look at kind of his, appeal. And they're going to say, yeah, he's a star. So you need to pay us like a star. And he's not a star. So I think that the Marlins would want somebody in that top 4 or 5. They'd want a Montez. They'd want a forward. And to me, I don't think Jazz is worth that. If they want to talk, Ty Pete and somebody in that range, the Aiden Smith, if they want to talk a bulk deal, if they want to talk Ty Locklear, then fine. I'm interested in that. But if I'm having to give up Ford, Young, Emerson, Laz, even Farelo at this stage, Feldman, I'm not interested in that. Again, we're talking about a 115, 120 WRC plus guy, not a 140. And we're talking, and that comes with all the injury risk that is associated with him too.
Yeah. I think the highest that I'm willing to go is Ty Pete. And if I'm the Mariners, that's why I'm telling the Marlins. And if they want something better than that and they're not willing to move off of that, then have a great day. I'm moving on. I'm looking elsewhere because, look, I like Jazz. I think the upside is immense. But even then, you add someone like that, it's not a slam dunk. And I need something closer to that right now. I need something closer to a guarantee that I can, if I'm going to pay top dollar, if I'm going to subtract from one of the better farms in baseball, I need someone that I can put in my lineup, because right now that's what I need, that can give me some stability. This team desperately needs stability, and they need someone that you can feel good about providing that. And Jazz, while the upside is very high, I don't feel great about him being able to give them that stability, whether it be in terms of the production or just from a health standpoint.
Yeah. If the Marlins are insistent that they get one of those 5 or 6 like premier prospects in the system, I would probably be like, okay, then you're talking about Jazz and like Luzardo, even though Luzardo is going to be out for about a month. Like, Jazz just isn't that guy to me. He's a good player. He's not a great player. Like, you wouldn't give up, Colt Emerson for Lars Nootbaar, right?
Yeah.
And Jazz is pretty much the same player with more injury risk.
Last question of the day comes from David. When do you consider moving JP Crawford down in the lineup? He is running a 286 OBP since June 1st. That seems unacceptable for a leadoff hitter. I agree, but also, what other options do you have? I guess Luke Raley. I guess Josh
maybe.
Rojas.
Yeah. There are a lot of people demanding big lineup, shakeups and moving guys up and down. And it's just like, okay, cool. Who's the better option?
Yeah.
Like, you need better players at this stage. Could they try some things? Sure. Crawford's striking out a ton right now. I know he's had some disagreements with the strike zone, and he's been right on a lot of them. But he's still striking out way too much on this road trip to be anywhere near the leadoff spot. There are some players who can strike out, and you live with it. JP Crawford is not one of them. He's got to find a way to put the ball in play more consistently. But Julio's not an option. I don't think Rojas is an option, although he's been better recently. Still, not great. I don't think you're trusting Ryan Bliss to be a leadoff hitter yet. So yeah, you kind of look at it and you go, against a right-handed pitcher, Luke Raley's probably the best choice. But then, okay, who at second? How far are you moving down JP? Second? You going to move Julio up? Zeroing that? Sticking with Rojas? Okay, who at third?
Yeah.
Right? You kind of start to see and say, okay, well, we know Garver, Julio, JP, Ty, Cal, they're going to be in the lineup. None of those guys are hitting that well right now.
Yeah.
Especially over the last week or two. So it at some point you're just kind of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, and you just have to get better players. So they did a little bit today. They tried Dom Canzone in the 4-hole. So it's not like they haven't tried to do things, and they haven't tried to get some of their hotter hitters up to the plate a little bit more frequently, but there's just not really a good configuration that makes a ton of sense. And, maybe Jorge Polanco comes up and he's a kind of the number 5 type of hitter that he's been for most of his career. And maybe you can put him at the number 2 spot, and you can go Raley and him, or you can go Raley and JP and then him, and maybe he can push everybody down. But we haven't seen that guy. We haven't seen Polanco play like that all year. So it's not really feeling great about his ability to come up and just kind of set everybody else up where they should be. Like, Julio probably shouldn't be hitting third. Okay, who should be?
Yeah,
who should hit ahead of him? So, like, if you say Luke Raley, be like, okay, fine. Luke Raley hits third. Now he's not hitting leadoff, right? So JP probably still hits leadoff.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a mess right now that they're trying to figure out.
And they're trying
You
to
know,
survive until the deadline, or until, once the market opens up, which, again, at this point, your solution is get new players, get better hitters.
it's really
Simple as that.
Yeah, it's really all you can do. Again, we're 81 games in. I think you got to start looking at guys for who they have been this year, and you can certainly say, oh, they might be better than they've been, but to expect like Jorge Polanco or Mitch Garver to get the guy that you got last year, or that they gave those teams last year, you're probably not going to see that guy. Now, you want him to get closer to being that guy, but you're probably not going to get Mitch Garver being a 133 WRC plus the rest of the year. But can he be a 110? Yeah, he could, and that's kind of what he needs to be. So,
Yeah.
Ultimately, you have to get new players, but there's only so many new players you can get. What
Right.
it really comes down to is your stars have to play like stars. And if you just look at this series, Julio, terrible.
Yeah.
Made a couple nice plays defensively, fine, whatever. Terrible at the plate. Cal Raleigh, terrible. JP
Yeah.
Crawford, terrible. Nothing else matters.
Right.
Literally nothing else matters. If
Everything
those three
begins
guys,
and ends with that.
Yep. If your core is not producing, there's
Yep.
only so much that the secondary characters or the secondary, pieces can do to lift the boats. And they won you a game on Saturday. They literally won you that game. Well, that and Logan Gilbert looking like a stud.
Right.
But it was the bottom of the lineup that won you that game on Saturday, and Logan Gilbert shoving. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Now, the offense was bad yet again yesterday and really in the series except for Saturday, but they did score 4. Like, they had a chance to score more. Bryce Miller.
Bryce Miller's at the top of the list for those to blame for Sunday's loss. But
Yes.
still, the offense as a whole is still a problem. And
Cal Raleigh's under 200 now.
Yeah.
And I think he's hit 2 home runs this month.
he had a really bad series in Miami.
JP
Really
Crawford's
bad
had
series.
a really bad series,
Yeah.
including some really bad at-bats and big moments.
Yeah.
So if those 3 guys aren't hitting, or if all 3 of those guys aren't hitting at the same time, which is the case right now, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is there are only so many roster spots that you can open up.
Yeah.
One, because your core is your core. The other is because, going back to our discussion about Mitch Haniger, with the way that the Mariners have operated as an organization, some guys that are making quite a bit of money, they're more likely than not going to keep those guys no matter what. They're not going to be willing to move on from them.
Right.
So Mitch Garver, Mitch Haniger, Jorge Polanco, probably here to stay unless they find a way to include those guys in some sort of contract swap at the deadline or near the deadline. So it's a mess that Jerry DiPoto and Justin Holland are going to have to try and figure out. But, like you said, big part of this is just core has to play better. That's what it is. And, some of it is also you just need to get new players because this just isn't working out. This mix is just not working out, and this is not sustainable whatsoever. All right, that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.